necessary. People say they don't want to deal with politics, but anytime you have three or more individuals who have to interact with each other, family, friends, business associates, neighbors, you have a political process because two of them are going to overwhelm one. So it's a process of who joins up with who to make the two against one to make the three. That's politics. Next thing, it's a matter of mindset. Over a 10-year period, they did this study when I was on the criminal bench. They were astonished to find out that I had reduced the recidivism rate in my courtroom over that decade from the statewide 80 some percent recidivism rate down to just 18%, and it was dropping. What was I doing? It was taking the defendants and apprising them or showing them what was going wrong with the way they were approaching life and to give them a purpose and cause. Once they got that, they straightened out. In 25 years, 30 years later, they come up and thank me about turning their lives around. Now, ideation, one of the most popular movies that came out for the black culture was The Woman King, another which is the highest grossing superhero movie of all time. Black Panther came out. Walt Disney and ABC were going broke. I won't go into why, but they needed cash flow to pay down some outstanding interest that had accrued. They put Black Panther out there where the penultimate scene is black women and black men of the same tribe trying to kill each other in open warfare, and that got the crowds of black folk cheering on. You had the remarks of Frederick Douglass, Thurgood Marshall, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, W.E.B. Du Bois were put in the mouth of the villain, and people were cheering when he got done in. We have Woman King that glorified the creatures who worked for Dutch slavery, enslaving millions of black Africans over what turned out to be a 250-year period. And we celebrated those horrible bitches that were trying to get insinuated into the money making process of the whole thing, and we made them heroes. It's horrible. Now, next thing that we have to deal with is that if we're going to change the slave ideation, we have to recognize it for what it is. When you get off of this X space and you go look through X, just take a good look at what you see and who's concerned in making big deals and getting thousands of views or interactions off of trifling bullshit that doesn't make a damn bit of difference. And then meanwhile, stop and pay attention to those who are actually talking about stuff that makes a better tomorrow, or at least analyzes it, or at least expresses some concern with the operative conditions of life in the United States, whatever side they're on. And I would submit most of the people that are on this space right now would probably fit into that latter category. But do reflect on how one of the things is to get folk fed and distracted so they will get their minds off of what others do in the political process. Now, we have a thing here. Modern technology has replaced the utility of slavery. You have machines, mass production machines that are agriculturally oriented that'll do stuff that once took thousands of slaves to do. We have an economy that depends upon technology because without that technology, the number of people that are currently alive on this planet could not exist. They'd starve. So it is the 21st century. Let's do what we have an opportunity to do, and that is get in on this science, technology, engineering, and math, aka STEM, STEM, so we can get into the 21st century on the ground floor without 15, 20 different floors stacked on top of us, where we can ride the elevator to the top and get somewhere where we have a product, an idea, a service, or something that does have an economic viability in the world that is now developing thanks to high technology, artificial intelligence, and a very ubiquitous spread of computerization. So we have that. We have the concept that one of our callers has touched on, and I find it interesting because it is an important one. We have a manifest conception in our community that criminality is somehow normal to Black people. It's not. It's an anomaly for all people, which is why it's universally punished. Now, we have to stop dealing with stuff where we have no responsibility for the morality involved. That is the thing that I put in the heads of my people, that I put on probation, let out of jail on bond, or whatever it might be, or cut some slack. You do it my way, or I'll kick your goddamn ass back up in a jail cell in a way that will make you do miserable time. But if you do what I do, then 10, 15 years from now, you'll come back and thank me, which is exactly what's happened. It's an ideation thing. You have to start thinking as a free person. The world is a dangerous goddamn place to live in, but we can deal with it. We can handle it well. We're at the top of the goddamn food chain. So act like it instead of running around whining about what's going wrong with your situation. We can do any damn thing we want, but we have to start thinking like a free people, and we don't belong to any damn body. We are not a domesticated animal wagging our goddamn tails because somebody gave us some kibbles and bits and scratched us behind the ears and say, oh, look at the poor girl, look at the baby boy, or whatever it is. We have to start acting like a free people. We don't belong to anybody. We vote according to what we will get as tangible benefits, even if we hate who we're voting for. Be effective. That's what everybody else does. They don't give a damn whether they like somebody or not. That's a full feminist piece of bullshit. You don't need to like somebody if he's a badass. You got money, you want to bet on the fight, or you going to bet on the guy, oh, he's so nice, or the one that can knock somebody out before the first round is up. That's what we need to learn how to do. And we can do that, but we have to start developing the mindset of a free people. And that includes the rest of the folk that are non-Black in this country who are about to find out what it is to have been in our condition as a minority. Because there are problems that some jackasses are putting in place because they have a cult. I'll call it the rainbow cult. It's a quasi religion that they're trying to impose forcibly on the American public, that has no values, no duty, honor, obligation, responsibility, accountability, duty, no bravery, no courage, no sense of purpose, no morality, no ethics, no cause, no sense of shame or guilt. And that is not how humans can prosper. In order to do something, you have to have standards and you have to understand their consequences. So we have to stabilize ourselves, go to our center, and we can do it. We can do any damn thing we set our minds to. But if you put your head in a vice that says, I'm a slave on a damn plantation, I can coast along and do as little as I can do because I get nothing out of what comes out of my labor. Somebody else does. Then you are a fool if you think like that in the 21st century, because that's exactly what will happen to you. You think like a slave, you'll be treated like a slave. Your consequences will be that of a slave. So think like free people. You can do any damn thing you want to, but it requires courage, bravery, dedication, and damnably hard work and application. Study, research, and the ability to do what's necessary to condition yourself mentally and physically to do what's needed. That's always been the formula for success on the planet Earth. And it does not elude us if we put our minds to it It is necessary that we go there because we will not prosper until and unless we do. Now, I'll land what you say, the airplane hell I passed the mic. That's all I got to say for this evening. Now,
All right. So conserving you just came up. You can say something, but can you kind of like make it quick? Then I'm gonna go to Professor. I'm asking Professor to make it quick, and then I'm gonna close out because I gotta get ready to go out of town, and I'm getting tired. Go ahead,
Thank you,
conserving.
Dana. Judge, I love everything that you just said, and I wanted to ask you. I went to go see Jordan Peterson a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about how people need to worship something, whether it's drugs, alcohol, food, adult content, or whatnot. Where do you think religion kind of plays into like steering us in the right direction, where we're doing, I guess, the right thing and following all those really good, lofty goals that you just spoke about? Like, should we? He was saying like we should be worshiping the ultimate good, which is pretty much God. How do you feel about something like that?
I think people prosper most when they become confident in their own guidance systems. Now, I'm not talking against religion. I just know that religion is, in fact, as Marx described it, an opiate of the people. Sometimes the people are in pain and they need a painkiller. The problem is that whereas the opiate becomes necessary and appropriate in extreme pain, if administered too frequently and over too long a period, it addicts people to a system where they do not perceive themselves as personally responsible. They look at themselves as corks on the water, blown by the winds of chance, perhaps directed by prayer rather than being creatures of free will. That is not good for anybody's success because it generates a mental condition of helplessness. That's not to say there's anything wrong with religion. It's just it should be taken in its proper course rather than becoming something upon which one is fixed. Everything ultimately will rest on your shoulders. Otherwise, there would not be the concept of hell, which is, hey, you do wrong, you pay for it one way or the other. Whether you deal with the hell is what happens incarnate upon your existence on the planet right now, or what you think is not going to be your pie in the sky type thing after you die. There's a sense of accountability and consequence that has to be interjected into this whole process. It is best when a person deals with it on his own. Now, I made an informal survey over a number of years. There is great truth to this old saying that good people sometimes do bad things. Bad people often do bad things, but for pure evil, you need religion. I did surveys and I asked everybody that I sentenced to deal with their answers to a series of questions. I found that the most religious people did the worst things that backed up that old saw. I found that agnostic people did not tend to do things that dealt with fundamental dishonesty to others. They tended to do stuff like maybe write a bad check in extremis, or they maybe got in fights or something like that. I found that atheists tended to be the most frequent offenders with stuff that was called crimes of moral turpitude. In other words, crimes of poor character, lying, embezzlement, stealing from those that you had an obligation to act responsibly toward, violating their fiduciary responsibilities, or as a trustee for somebody that wasn't them. So I will quote Minister Louis Farrakhan on something I heard him say early one Sunday morning in 1976. He said, some people will not understand what I am saying. He says, there are four states of mankind. There is the pagan savage who has no standards, who does everything based on a whim without care for the consequence to others. That is one. That is the lowest condition of man. The second lowest condition of man is the religious person who does things based on a fear of eternal damnation. The third category of person, which is next to the highest, is the intellectual person who attempts to guide his conduct by his own personal standards of right and wrong and makes a continuous assessment of his behaviors based on his personal values and his desire to commit himself to what is right. The highest state of mankind is the spiritual man who has been an intellectual man long enough so that he now walks in the pathways of righteousness. It, ex, what does he say? Instinctively, because it's automatic. He does the right thing as a matter of habit. So I think that would explain the thing about religion. In other words, it's better than having no principle at all, but it's not as good as having personal principles. And it's not as good as a pattern and practice of righteous behavior that leads one to behave appropriately all of the time as a matter of conditioned reflex. So I'll just offer
All
up
right.
what Minister Farrakhan said, and that was almost 50 years ago.